My daughter-in-law didn't come to my son's funeral. That hurt more than the organ, more than the flowers, more than a hollow thud I knew I'd hear when they lowered his coffin. While I stood in a dim chapel staring at my boy's closed casket, I kept glancing at the door, waiting for Claire to rush in with red eyes and ruined mascara. She never did. The funeral director leaned toward me with a professional sadness and whispered, "Mr. Hale, should we wait a little longer for your daughter-in-law?" I looked at the empty front row, then at the brass nameplate on the coffin. "No," I said. "Start. I'm Martin Hale, and that morning I believed I was saying goodbye to my only child, Leo. Around 3 people came to pay their respects. I counted them during the prayers because counting felt safer than feeling. Neighbors, co-workers, 2 college friends, even his old baseball coach. They'd all rearranged their lives to stand in that room with my son one last time. His wife was not one of them. I gave a eulogy myself because there was no one else. I talked about Leo's obsession with baseball stats when he was 9, how he'd taped his broken glasses instead of admitting they needed replacing, how proud I'd been when he graduated near the top of his business program and started his own consulting firm. I didn't mention the panic attacks he'd started hiding or how distant he'd been lately. Always checking his phone, always saying, "Just work stuff, Dad, don't worry." I didn't mention the arguments I'd heard through their kitchen wall the last time I stayed over to watch their dog, as people filed past the casket with the usual soft lines. "He was so young. I'm so sorry. He's in a better place. I heard the whispers too. Where's Claire? Isn't she his wife? Maybe she's too broken to come." Their pity for her felt like sandpaper on raw skin. If they had known what I would see a few hours later, they would have swallowed their words. At the cemetery, the wind tugged at the green canvas over the grave as straps lowered the polished box into the ground. The pastor talked about dust and ashes. I barely heard him. All I could think about was Claire's phone call 4 days earlier, when a hospital pronounced Leo dead from a stress-induced heart attack at 34. She'd sobbed so hard I could barely understand her, begged me to handle the arrangements until she could get back from visiting her sister in Arizona. "I'll be there, Martin, I swear," she cried. "I won't let you stand there alone." She did. That evening my house felt wrong, like someone had turned the volume of the world down to a whisper. Leo's favorite mug still sat on the drying rack. His jacket still hung on the back of a chair. I called Claire, straight to voicemail. I texted. No answer. On the 3rd unanswered call, something sour twisted in my gut. I did something I'd never done in my life. I downloaded Instagram just to look her up. Her profile appeared instantly. Claire and Leo on some rooftop, both smiling, his arm around her. I scrolled down through the last few days. Coffee selfies, shopping bags, poolside photos from recharging with sis. For a grieving widow, she looked suspiciously relaxed. Then I saw the newest post, uploaded that afternoon while I was standing beside an open grave. Claire in a red bikini at a beach bar, laughing into the camera, a neon drink in one hand. The other hand rested on the shoulder of Diego, the gardener who'd been redoing their yard all summer. His arm was tied around her waist like it belonged there. The location tag read Cancun, Mexico. The caption said, "Life's short, time for a fresh start." My whole body went cold. While I shoveled dirt onto my son's coffin, his wife was clinking glasses with another man under palm trees. The comments made it worse. "So proud of you for choosing happiness," one friend wrote. "You deserve this, babe." Another added. Her sister had commented, "Finally done with all that drama. Love this for you and Diego." My son's death reduced the drama she was finally done with. I closed the app and poured whiskey into a glass with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. For 8 years, I'd let that woman call me Dad. I defended her when Leo complained about her spending, her mood swings, her secretive messages. And while I buried my boy, she was toasting new beginnings with the gardener in Mexico. I was still staring at nothing when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, assuming it was another distant cousin with condolences they didn't really mean. Then I read the message. "Dad, it's me. Don't freak out. Come to the house. Don't call anyone. Don't text Claire. Just drive. Leo. 12 hours after watching his coffin disappear into ground, my dead son was texting me from a number I didn't recognize, and I had no idea that going to that house would hurt even more than his funeral. I don't remember driving over. One moment I was in my kitchen with the taste of whiskey and bile in my mouth. The next I was turning onto Leo's quiet cul-de-sac, the streetlights painting yellow pools on the pavement. His house looked exactly like it had 2 days earlier when I met Claire there to talk about arrangements. Same neat lawn Diego had been working on, same porch light, same curtains. The only difference was a heavy feeling in my chest and the fact that my son was supposed to be 6 feet underground. I let myself in with my spare key. Leo! My voice sounded strange in the dark hallway. The house smelled like coffee and laundry detergent, not like a tomb. I walked past framed photos, Leo in a cap and gown, Leo and Claire on some beach vacation, a Christmas shot of 3 of us in matching sweaters Claire insisted on. Everything looked normal, which somehow made it worse. Light spilled from the kitchen. I stepped through the doorway and my heart hammered, so hard I could hear it in my ears. My son was sitting at the table, alive, leaner, paler, dark circles under his eyes, but breathing. A mug of coffee sat untouched in front of him. He looked up and flinched like he expected me to hit him. "Hey, Dad," he said hoarsely. I'm sorry." My knees almost gave out. "You're dead," I heard myself say. It came out rough, like my voice had been dragged over gravel. I watched them close the casket. "I threw dirt on you." He winced. "I know how it looks. Please, sit down. Let me explain before you call anyone." I didn't sit. If I sat, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stand up again. "Explain." I snapped. "You faked your own death, Leo. Do you have any idea what the last 4 days have been for me?" He pushed the mug away, hands trembling. 6 months ago, I took on a client at the firm, Aurora Biotech. You remember me talking about them? Big pharmaceutical contract, supposed to be our ticket to the next level. I nodded stiffly. I remembered him bragging about it. The way his eyes had lit up when he said he could finally pay off the house and maybe take Claire to Europe. They were testing a new arthritis drug, he continued. Only the numbers didn't add up. People in the trial were getting seriously sick. Some died. The reports they showed me were polished, too clean. I dug into internal files I wasn't supposed to see. He swallowed. They were hiding side effects, Dad. They knew. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the kitchen's temperature. "You told someone?" First I confronted the CEO, Brandt. He told me I'd misread the data. Then he offered me $500,000 to stay in my lane and let the FDA process roll on. He said it would fix everything in the long run. We just had to get through this quarter. Leo gave a bitter half-laugh. Claire loved that house, loved the renovations, loved the vacations we couldn't afford. $500,000 would have solved every fight we were having about money. For about 10 seconds, I thought about taking it. Then I thought about people swallowing that pill because they trusted the system. "You went to the feds," I said quietly. He nodded. "An agent from the DOJ. I turned over everything. Emails, trial data, internal memos. I became the whistleblower. Aurora's stock tanked when the story broke. Brandt was arrested. So were 2 senior guys. But before they hauled him off, he told me he had friends who'd make sure I didn't enjoy my moral high ground for long." Leo rubbed his face, fingers digging into his temples. 3 weeks later the threat started. Unknown numbers, men who knew way too much about my schedule, our house, you. They said I'd ruin lives and cost powerful people millions. They didn't want jail, they wanted me gone. A sick understanding crawled up my spine. "So instead of letting them kill you, you decided to disappear." "Dr. Singh helped," he said. "We went to med school together before I switched to business. He works at the hospital. He told me if I didn't vanish, I'd wind up in a ditch or you would. We staged a heart attack. He swapped records, used a different John Doe in the morgue, signed off on a certificate. It had to look real. He thought we had hours before someone decided to resolve the problem permanently." I finally sank into a chair, the room wobbling around me. "And Claire?" I asked. "She was screaming on the phone when I told her you were dead. She promised she'd get back here. Stand next to me. Handle everything with me. Leo's jaw tightened, something dark flashing through his eyes. Claire knew, he said. Not about Aurora's crimes. Not at first. But she knew about the threats. She knew I was planning to vanish. The plan was simple. I die. She'd play the grieving widow for 6 months, then quietly slip out of the country and meet me in Canada. New names, new life, clean slate. She cried and said she'd follow me anywhere. He let out a slow breath. That was before I saw what she did the second she thought I was out of the picture. He looked at me, and for the first time since I walked in, his anger matched mine. Tell me, Dad, he asked, voice low. What exactly was Claire doing while you were burying an empty box with my name on it? I told him everything. The empty front row at the funeral. The whispers. The Instagram post in the red bikini, the cocktail. Diego's arm around her waist. The caption about fresh starts. The sister's comment about being done with the drama. I watched the muscles in Leo's jaw clench tighter with each detail. When I mentioned the location tag, Cancun, he gave a humorless laugh. Of course, he muttered. She always wanted to go there on my dime. Leo, I said slowly, that picture was posted while the pastor was still talking over your grave. Over my decoy, he corrected, then shook his head like he hated himself for the word. I knew she'd moved on fast, but I didn't realize she couldn't even wait until after the burial. He stood, walked to the counter, and pulled out a slim laptop I'd never seen. There's more, he said, opening it. I wasn't completely stupid. Once the threat started, I stopped ignoring signs I should have noticed a long time ago. The screen filled with spreadsheets, screenshots, and scanned documents. Leo scrolled through with a detached precision he used to reserve for client presentations. 3 months before Aurora blew up, small amounts started disappearing from our joint accounts, he said. 200 here, 300 there. When I asked Claire, she said she was buying surprise gifts, planning a romantic trip. I wanted to believe her, so I did. He clicked to a folder of photos, jewelry, handbags, hotel bills. Those gifts showed up on bills from high-end boutiques and hotels I never stayed in, he said flatly. And see this. He zoomed in on a string of charges. Diego doesn't just mow lawns. He likes luxury hotels when someone else is paying. They were meeting, too, sometimes 3 times a week while I was working late to keep the business afloat. My hands curled into fists without me meaning to. She used your money to cheat on you. Oh, that's the warm-up act, Leo said. He opened another folder labeled legal. Right after Aurora's lawyer started circling, Claire contacted a private investigator. She told me it was to keep us safe from anyone who might come after us. He clicked open messages between Claire and a man whose email signature included the word investigations. Her words were cold on the screen. Descriptions of Leo's anxiety, sleeplessness, occasional drinking, all twisted into a story about a man spiraling out of control. She wasn't trying to protect me, Leo said quietly. She was building a record that I was unstable. So if I turned up dead, it would look like suicide. Stress whistleblower, couldn't handle the pressure, tragic but believable. He pulled up yet another file. 3 life insurance policies with his name, all taken out in the last 2 years, all listing Claire as the beneficiary. Total payout, just over $1.5 million. She forged my signature on these, he said. I proved it with an expert before I died. Suicide clauses too, but only after a 2-year waiting period. Guess when the last one reached that magic date? 2 weeks before my heart attack. She's been planning this for years, Dad. The Aurora mess and the threats just gave her the perfect excuse if something happened to me for real. My stomach turned. This wasn't just adultery or greed. It was something colder. So you gathered all this. I said, my voice rough. Why didn't you take it straight to the police? Because I was already a dead man on paper, he said. If I walked into a station, I'd have to admit I faked a death certificate with a hospital insider and lied to federal agents about where I was going. Singh could lose his license or his freedom. The people who wanted me gone would know I was still breathing. And Claire? She'd cry on television about her crazy husband who faked his own death to punish her. Jurors love a good performance. He shut the laptop halfway and looked at me. I needed another way, one that didn't require me to step into the light until it was safe. One that made her trap snap shut on her own neck. "What did you do?" I asked. Some of the shock had burned off, replaced by a hard, focused anger I hadn't felt in years. Leo opened the laptop again, this time to a set of letters and scheduled emails. "I met with my lawyer the day before I died," he said. "Changed my will, left everything to you. Cut Claire out completely, citing suspected infidelity and financial misconduct. I also drafted formal disputes with every insurance company she'd taken policies from. Told them I believed my wife was planning to profit from my death and that if anything happened, they should investigate her for fraud." He tapped the screen. "Those disputes were set to send automatically if two things happened. My death was recorded, and Claire filed claims within 30 days. She cashed out the first policy yesterday, Dad. Every company she touched has now frozen her payouts pending investigation." He finally sat down across from me, eyes clear for the first time that night. "She thinks she's untouchable. She thinks she's a rich widow with a new boyfriend and a free life ahead of her. She has no idea that the man she thought she buried took careful notes before he climbed into the dark." He folded his hands. "I couldn't stop Aurora's greed from getting people hurt, but I can stop Claire from enjoying a single peaceful second of the fortune she tried to steal off my supposed corpse. The question is, are you willing to help me act like you're still the broken old man she thinks you are while we tighten the screws?" The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. In public, I played my part, the grieving father who'd lost his only child. I visited the cemetery twice a week with fresh flowers, stood the right amount of time at the headstone, even spoke out loud sometimes so the other mourners would see a man trying to talk to his dead son. The knowledge that the coffin was empty made it all feel obscene, but it necessary. At home, I checked CLA 000 with zero Ires social media more than I slept. She dropped any pretense of being in Arizona with her sister. Every new post was a punch. Beachside dinners with Diego, spa days, shopping in resort boutiques, sunsets with wine glasses clinking together. Her followers shifted from "so sorry for your loss" to "so proud of you for healing." Her sister wrote, "Leo would want you to live your best life." I knew Leo read those comments too, because in our secret meetings at a greasy diner off the highway, his jaw tightened every time I mentioned a new post. He spent those days feeding evidence to the investigators. His pre-scheduled complaints had woken up. They thought it was just another messy claim at first. He told me over coffee that had gone cold. Now they're calling it textbook fraud. Multiple overlapping policies, forged signatures, immediate claims, and then he slid his phone over so I could see a nice little vacation with a supposed widow and her new boyfriend days after the funeral. They love that part. "When do they act?" I asked. "Soon," he said. "Frozen accounts, flagged credit cards. Claire's about to discover that a rich widow without access to her money is just a tourist with expensive taste and a very big bill." He was right. It started with voicemails. At first, I let them go unanswered, just saved and forwarded them to Leo. "Martin, it's Claire. Something's wrong with my bank app. Can you call me?" The next one came a few hours later. "Hey, I don't know if you've seen any weird mail from the insurance people. They're asking questions, probably routine, but I can't get through on the phone. It keeps saying, under review. Call me when you get this." By day 2, the cracks showed. "Martin, my cards aren't working down here. The resort says my payment was declined. Can you front me a wire until I get this sorted? It's just a glitch, I'm sure." Day 3, panic. They're saying my accounts are frozen. The manager here is talking about calling the police if I can't pay the bill. Please answer. I know you're getting these. I'm scared. Leo listened to them all with a tight, quiet satisfaction that scared me a little. "She's not scared of being broke," he said. "She's scared the story isn't under control anymore." The investigators moved fast once they had proof she'd used insurance money for a luxury trip days after her husband's death. The FBI stepped in when cross-state wire transfers and possible organized schemes popped up. Claire didn't know any of that yet. She just knew the ATMs treated her like a stranger. Diego solved the side of the problem the easy way. He left. One morning, Claire's Instagram went silent. No more couple shots, no more pool photos. A mutual acquaintance of hers posted a story that Leo showed me. Diego back in our city, beer in hand, laughing with his friends, and a caption in Spanish that boiled down to, "Rich gringa turned out not so rich." On the 8th day after the funeral, Claire finally got a relative to wire her enough for a flight home. Leo already knew her itinerary. He had contacts feeding him updates he shouldn't technically have, but no one complained when the information was headed toward more fraud charges. Her plane lands tomorrow at 8:30, he told me. By then the locks on the house will be changed, and there'll be a notice on the door from the bureau. She'll come to you, because she'll think you're still the one person on her side. And what do I say? I asked. He gave me a look that was more his mother than me, tired but sharp. "You tell her the truth you're allowed to tell," he said. "That the FBI thinks someone forged my name on life insurance policies. That they have pictures from Mexico. That they want to talk to her. That you can't help her. Let her feel the floor dropping away. Let her start to realize the ghost she cashed in on has claws." The next night, I watched her flight crawl across a tracking app until it landed. An hour later, my phone rang. "Martin?" Her voice sounded thin, frayed. "Thank God you answered. I'm back, but my key won't work, and there's some kind of government paper taped to the door. Can you come? I'm scared to be here alone." I told her I'd be there in 20 minutes, and hung up before I could let any of my real feelings slip into my voice. As I drove over, past the dark trees and familiar streetlights, I realized that burying my son had not been the hardest thing I had done that month. The hardest thing was going to be looking into Claire's tear-streaked face and pretending this was the first time I was seeing who she really was. Claire was pacing on the front porch when I pulled up, a duffel bag at her feet, and rage barely disguised as fear on her face. The glamorous woman from the beach photos was gone. This Claire had greasy hair twisted into a knot, yesterday's makeup smeared, and clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. "Martin!" She rushed toward me like she meant to hug me, but I shifted just enough that her arms brushed my shoulder instead of wrapping around me. She noticed. Her eyes flickered, then turned quickly wet. "Look," she said, pointing to the taped paper on the door. "I don't understand any of this. Why would the FBI care about Leo's heart attack?" I took my time reading the notice even though I already knew what it said. Ongoing investigation. Suspected insurance irregularities. Assets temporarily secured. I let the official words hang in the air before I turned back to her. "They're looking into the insurance money," I said calmly. "Apparently someone thinks there might have been fraud." "Fraud." She laughed once, brittle. "That's insane. Leo died, the policies paid out, and She cut herself off too late." "What policies, Claire?" I asked. "The ones you told me you never knew about? The ones the companies now say have signatures that don't match Leo's notary records?" I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling David, Leo's lawyer. Maybe he can explain what's going on." "Good," she said quickly, clinging to the idea of a professional on her side. I put the phone to my ear and dialed the number Leo had given me. David really did pick up, but we'd rehearsed this. I repeated the key parts loud enough for Claire to hear. "Insurance fraud?" I said, frowning. "Multiple policies? Forged signatures." Claire's face went slack. She grabbed my arm. "Martin, tell him I didn't forge anything. I just signed what they told me." I held up a hand and kept listening. "They froze the payouts," I said into the phone. "And they have. What did you call it? Documentary evidence the widow was in Cancun with another man days after the funeral. Paying with those same funds?" Claire stumbled back like I'd hit her. "How do they know about Cancun?" She whispered. "I never told. I covered the mouthpiece and looked at her." "You told everyone." I said. "You tagged the location. You posted the pictures." I paused and added, "You remember the red bikini, don't you?" She went pale. I wrapped up the fake call and put my phone away. "David says the FBI will want to talk to you as soon as possible," I said. "They have questions about the timing of the policies, the quick claims, the spending, and your trip." She shook her head hard. "It wasn't like that," she said. "You don't understand. Diego is just a friend. I was falling apart, and he comforted you. I finished for her on a resort balcony, with my son barely in the ground." Tears spilled over. Leo and I were already in a bad place, she said desperately. He was paranoid, drinking more, saying people were out to get him. I thought, she faltered, then switched tactics mid-sentence. I thought a change of scenery would help me cope. The doctor said not to sit in the house, staring at his things. Mexico was therapy. Is that what you call uploading pictures of yourself wrapped around the gardener while I stood at your husband's grave alone? I asked. My voice came out low and flat, which seemed to scare her more than shouting would have. You weren't at the funeral, Claire. You weren't at the burial. You were in a swimsuit. #bless. She grabbed for my hand again. Missed? Martin, please, you have to believe me. I loved Leo, I did. I didn't know how to grieve. You seem to figure out how to spend, I said. Flights, hotels, jewelry. All on accounts that now say under investigation. She swallowed hard. What am I supposed to do? She whispered. They said, I can't even move back into my own house while this is going on. I don't have access to anything. You're the only family I have left. I looked at the house behind her, the house my son had worked himself sick to afford. You should talk to a lawyer, I said. Not me. I'm just an old man who buried his son and then found out his daughter-in-law was celebrating new beginnings with someone else 5 days later. I stepped off the porch. She followed, voice rising. You can't just leave. Me like this. They'll arrest me, Martin. You have to tell them. I'm not that kind of person. You know me. I stopped at my car and looked back at her one last time. I thought I did. I said, turns out I didn't know you at all. I got in and shut the door on her, please. In the rear-view mirror, I saw her crumple onto the steps, hands tangled in her hair, as if she could pull a different version of herself out by the roots. 20 minutes later, I was at Leo's secret apartment, watching him listen to the recording I'd made of the whole encounter. When he reached the part where she screamed that she'd be arrested, he hit pause and sat very still. She's right about one thing. He said, finally, the FBI is coming. They'll knock on her motel door early. By the time the sun's up, the rich widow she tried so hard to play will be wearing county orange, and that's when I get to come back from the grave and watch. They arrested her just after dawn the next morning, at a budget motel off the interstate. I wasn't there, but Leo's contact in the bureau called his estate lawyer with updates that somehow found their way to us over breakfast. She tried to run to the bathroom. Leo relayed, almost clinically. Now she's in a holding cell, charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy, and a few other lovely things. Bail set at $500,000. She can't afford a bus ticket without frozen cards, let alone bail. I said, for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt something like balance returning. Leo nodded. Her sister might scrape together a lawyer's retainer, he said. But the days of Claire buying everyone's forgiveness are over. We sat in the same diner booth where we'd plotted this for 2 weeks. Outside, the sky was low and gray, threatening snow. Inside, Leo's shoulders had lost some of their permanent hunch. There's one more player you should know about, he added, stirring his untouched coffee. Diego wasn't just a random affair. The FBI has been tracking him for 18 months. He targets bored, wealthy spouses in the suburbs, encourages them to take out big policies on their partners, nudges them toward accidents or suicides, then disappears once they cash in and start sending him money. I let that sink in. Claire had thought she was running a scam on Leo. All along, she'd been the mark in someone else's game. Where is he now? I asked. Mexico. Maybe already on his way further south. Leo said. They'll get him eventually. But I'm not waiting around to see his mugshot. I've got my own resurrection to deal with. That happened later the same day. Dr. Singh met me at the hospital entrance looking tired enough to really have made a mistake. You know the story, he murmured as we walked. Equipment malfunction, misidentified patient, rare coma state that mimicked death. We admit fault, cover expenses, and everyone agrees to call it tragic error instead of fraud. Will they buy it? I asked. He gave a small shrug. Hospitals do worse and get away with it, he said. And frankly, after what your son did for the government, a few people are happy to sign the right forms. Leo lay in a bed on the same floor where he died 2 weeks earlier, hooked up to monitors this time. He'd shave, but the weight loss and dark circles were real. When I walked in, he blinked like he hadn't seen sunlight in days. "Dad," he croaked. "What? What happened?" I remember pain, and then I played my part. "You've been in a coma, son," I said, letting my voice shake. "They told me you were gone. They signed papers. We had a funeral." I didn't have to fake the emotion in that last sentence. Dr. Singh came in with a clipboard and his best apologetic expression. "Mr. Hale, I need to formally explain," he said. "Your son was never truly deceased. A combination of equipment failure and human error led us to misinterpret his condition. He was in a catatonic state, not beyond saving. By the time we realized the certificate had been filed and things had progressed." "Progressed?" I repeated just loud enough. "You mean I buried an empty box because of a hospital typo?" "We are deeply sorry for the trauma this has caused," Singh said, "and I believe that part. The hospital will cover all funeral costs, and there will be a full internal investigation. Right now, our priority is your son's recovery." Leo squeezed my hand weakly. "Claire," he whispered, eyes wide. "Does she know? Where is she? I need to see my wife." I exchanged a look with Singh, then sat down. "That's complicated," I said. "While you were in that coma, Claire filed multiple life insurance claims on policies you didn't sign. The FBI believes she forged your name. This morning they arrested her. Leo's performance would have won awards." Shock, denial, then slow dawning horror as I showed him the printed screenshots of her Cancun photos. "She was with Diego?" he asked, voice breaking at the right places. "Our gardener? While everyone thought I was dead. While your father stood at a grave with your name on it," Singh added quietly, more angry than his role required. Leo let his head fall back against the pillow. 8 years of marriage," he said. "And the second she thought I was gone, she took the money and ran." He closed his eyes, let a tear track down his cheek, then opened them again, clearer. "I'll cooperate with whatever the FBI needs," he said. "If she forged my signature, if she lied, they can have every email, every message I ever saw." Singh nodded, satisfied, and slipped out to alert the necessary departments that their miracle coma patient was ready to talk. When we were alone, Leo's theatrically shattered expression melted into something else. Tired relief. "Phase 3, he murmured. "Dead man officially alive, fraud officially real, Claire officially screwed. What happens to you now?" I asked. "To Leo? Leo Hale will always be that guy from the hospital mix-up," he said. "The whistleblower who almost died and came back. Reporters, podcasts, crazies. I don't want that life. But your son could have a different name in a different state. The DOJ owes me a favor or two after Aurora. They're willing to help with a quiet relocation once the trial is done." He smiled faintly. "Someplace warmer. Fewer memories. Maybe a small consulting firm that specializes in spotting the kind of fraud I lived through." He looked at me. "Every firm needs a senior partner. Someone stubborn enough to go to war for family." 3 months later, a modest sign went up on the front of a brick building in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hale and Sons Risk Consulting. The landlord didn't know that only one of those sons legally existed under that name. The business card said Robert Hale, CEO, and Martin Hale, senior partner. Inside, the office still smelled of fresh paint and new carpet, but the work felt old and familiar: spreadsheets, contracts, risk assessments. The difference was that now every red flag we spotted in a client's paperwork felt personal. We lived what those numbers could do. Meanwhile, the fallout from Claire and Diego's little enterprise had rippled far beyond our old neighborhood. Claire took a plea deal rather than sit through a trial where every Cancun photo and every message about being done with the drama would be projected on a giant screen. 12 years in federal prison, with restitution payments that would follow her long after parole. She cried at sentencing, I'm told, not for Leo, but for herself. Diego's luck ran out in Guatemala 6 months later. The FBI, who'd been building a case around his pattern of seducing spouses and steering them toward convenient tragedies, finally got to put a face to the ghost in so many files. His charges made Claire's look like a parking ticket. The insurance companies clawed back most of the money Claire had managed to touch. They put out internal memos about tightening verification processes, about never paying out life-changing sums without triple-checking signatures. Aurora Biotech scandal, Leo's whistleblowing, and Claire's fraud became cautionary tales in training seminars we'd never attend. On the anniversary of Leo's supposed death, Robert and I flew back quietly to our old city. No one recognized him. A beard, a different haircut, and 15 healthier pounds made him look like a cousin rather than the miracle coma patient from the news article the hospital's PR team had spun. We drove to the cemetery with a bouquet of plain white flowers. The headstone with his real name was still there, standing over a coffin that had never held him. We should dig it up and put a note in there, he joked weakly as we stood over the grass. Dear whoever opens this in 100 years, the guy whose name is on the stone was having coffee in North Carolina when you read this. I snorted to spite myself. You're the consultant, I said. I'm just the old man who got promoted. He went quiet for a long moment, then asked, Do you ever regret it? What we did to her? I thought about the question the whole year before that day. I thought about Claire's crocodile tears in my kitchen right after Leo's death, about her bikini-clad laughter in Cancun, about the empty chair at the funeral, about the way she called my son's life drama she was finally done with. I thought about the forged signatures, the PI she hired to paint him as unstable, the life she would have built on his grave if we'd done nothing. I regret that you ever met her, I said. I regret not seeing what she was from the start, but I don't regret taking back what she tried to steal from you, or making sure she couldn't do it to anyone else. He nodded slowly. She had so many chances, he said. She could have told me about the money problems instead of sneaking around. She could have walked away instead of trying to cash in on my death. She chose the version of herself she's living with now. We left the flowers and walked back to the rental car. As we drove away, I watched the rows of stones recede in the rearview mirror and realized something that surprised me. A year earlier, that cemetery had felt like the final page of my life. Retirement, loneliness, routine grief until it was my turn under the grass. But losing my son, finding out he wasn't lost, and then fighting side by side with him to expose the truth had done something strange. It had given me back a reason to get up in the morning. On the plane back to Charlotte, Robert, but it'll always be Leo to me, fell asleep with a folder of new client documents open on his lap. I looked at his face, no longer haunted the way it had been that night in the kitchen, and thought about Claire pacing on that porch, convinced she could talk her way out of the story she wrote herself into. Some people think death is the end of the story. I've learned it's often just a plot twist. My son's death cost us a lot, but it bought us something too, a second life, a new name on a new door, and the satisfaction of knowing that the woman who tried to profit off his grave now wakes up every morning behind bars, with nothing to toast except a memory of the moment she realized the man she buried wasn't the ground. He was watching, waiting, and getting ready to pull her entire lie down around her.